Hi, it's Wendi Jensen here, your second life midwife, helping you to be able to rebirth yourself into the person that you know you're meant to be. And I have a question that someone asked me, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about it and see if it might help you too. If you're transitioning out of high demand religion, I have a couple resources for you. I have a book that's available, A Peculiar Transition, Healing the Trauma of Mormon Faith Crisis. I also have a Facebook group. The link is down below. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I do private sessions, online coaching, and group coaching. And so I have so many things available for you. If this is a time in your life where you are experiencing the crisis of faith transition, then I'm here for you. So let's talk a little bit about this question. And the question is, when all the logic makes sense and you've rationalized and you've studied and you've done a deep study and you know deep down inside that the religion is not all that it was cracked up to be, but you're still afraid of that you're going to be making the wrong decision, and that if you step away, then everything will collapse, and you'll lose your family in the next life, and what if you're wrong? And that is a fair question. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today. And I want to start off with a story that I actually heard from Rodney Allgood, who works with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And when I heard this analogy, I thought, oh, this is a perfect example. So imagine that you were born in a prison and other people were being born in the prison. And they don't really know it's a prison. They just think it's this space where we all collectively gather together, and we all wear the same clothes, and we all kind of sing the same songs, and we all kind of talk alike. We talk about very similar things because all we know is prison life. And I know this is an extreme example because when you're in a high demand religion, you do somewhat interchange with the rest of the world. But as far as your mind is constructed, you are experiencing so many repetitive doctrines, behaviors, rituals, that your mind is really being programmed and wired, if you will, to have all the same like beliefs. And so let's imagine you're in this prison and you're singing all the same songs and you're wearing all the same clothes and you have a lot of the same ideas and you recognize each other very simply because you have so much in common, like your energy is even the same. You might all have different personalities and you all might think differently, but because your environment is so controlled that you all have very common ideas and thoughts. What's also interesting about this idea of being raised in a prison is that you are taught in a religious construct that obedience is the pathway to safety. If you obey, you'll be safe. Obedience is the pathway to power. You'll receive spiritual power and spiritual favor with God. Obedience will provide you protection from the outside world, protection from the adversary, from Satan. And then you're also, through your obedience, promised position and prominence within your community, that you'll receive callings and different stages of leadership, and too many egos. In fact, all of these things are designed to really prick the ego and make the ego feel that sense of false safety, and that anything outside of that is going to feel really insecure, really unfamiliar. So let's imagine that this prison has a whole library full of books, and you are allowed to investigate all of those books and read and study those books. And there are more books that have been approved by the prison for your study, and they're coming in, and so you're feeling like you're getting a well-rounded education, and you're studying all the things out that you've been allowed to study. And so you're singing all the same songs too. And you're being taught within this prison that everybody outside the prison is against us. And we call it a persecution complex, that if they fight against what it is we believe, then they're against us. And the adversary is the one that's putting it in their heart to be against us. And if you're, LDS, we were taught to recruit and to go out there and bring people back into our space. We don't tell them it's a prison. We tell them that it's freedom, but until they get really deeper down into the doctrine, they don't recognize it as such. So let's imagine too that one night the warden comes in and says, okay, we have great news. We're going to have a big event. And tonight we are going to fill water balloons. We're going to have a water fight. We're going to have a barbecue, all you can eat barbecue. And we're going to watch all the movies from the library that you get to pick. So you go in there and you pick the ones you want. We're going to watch those ones. We're going to play games together. We're going to have a great fun time. And so you get all excited and you feel the excitement of being able to have this event with everybody else in the prison who thinks and acts and believes just as you do. And so that moment, that event feels like such an epic time, because that is the pinnacle. You're being taught that that's the pinnacle of fun and excitement and connectivity. So I liken this a lot to like General Conference, or if your church has any kind of assembly. We have a biannual assembly where we have General Conference in the LDS church, and the prophets get together, the apostles, they have the leaders speak, and they have even a few women will speak. And this General Conference is a tradition. And so we have many families get together and they plan these General Conference events, and you can get General Conference bingo and General Conference packets, and everybody has these other traditions like cinnamon rolls on General Conference morning, because many of us watch it from home. And so we go to this General Conference event thinking it's so fabulous, and we listen to the speakers, and it's interesting that you'll hear people say how amazing General Conference was. They really felt the Spirit and they were enlightened, and they know that the prophets are leading the church and leading the way that the Savior would have them go. And it's not until you're 2 or 3 years out that you listen to General Conference and you go, there is absolutely nothing profound coming from there. It just feels so empty and so stale and so stagnant. And you just realize how you were making it a big deal in your mind, because that's your cultural traditions. And not realizing that there are so many deep, rich teachings outside of the bubble of the doctrine, that there are other people on pathways of growth and development. You never get to see that because you are confined in this bubble. And so when you ask the question, when all the logic makes sense and the reasoning makes sense, but you're still afraid that you're making the wrong choice, it has everything to do with your conditioning, being told that those who leave are deceived or offended, or they're too proud, that they intellectualize themselves out of the gospel. You are given the narrative as to why people leave, and there is no reasonable or good reason to leave. And so if you're in this prison and you would look outside the doors and you might see other people, but you're being told, no, they're not having fun. They're deceiving themselves. They're in denial. And you might even see some of those people outside the prison saying, come on, it's not scary. It's not bad. Nothing's going to happen to you. It's so awesome out here. There's so many wonderful things for you to learn. And I'm so glad that I'm not in that prison anymore. And you're being told that no matter what those people outside are saying, that they're in denial, that they're tempting you, and that they're lost, and that they're destroying their lives. And so there are so many things put in place that create an encasement of fear. It's like we have to cross that threshold, and it takes courage and bravery, because any really socially and culturally and theologically unhealthy institution, you don't get to leave with your dignity intact, because the insulated group is taught that there is no good reason to leave. And you can also know that you're in an unhealthy institution or system when you need therapy, when you leave, you need coaching, and you need to figure out how to unpack and deprogram from these, because it's so tightly woven and control is so deeply enmeshed into your psyche. And so there is an intentional fear barrier put around the doctrine that causes you to have these feelings. Now, if we go really deep down into, the beginning of the time of man, back in the primal stages of man, in tribes, we would get together for safety, for power. We would get together for protection, and there would be positions for your obedience. And so these were old technologies that we used to actually really do keep safe. And if you got banished from the tribe, it was death to you, because there was no way that you could survive on your own. And so some of those fears are primal. They're like wired in you at your core. Leaving the tribe means more, even at a genetic, like in your DNA, not being included and needing that feeling of wanting to belong. It's innate in us. And so that's another threshold. We have to weigh and measure the fallout of us leaving. And it's pretty intense. And so you're in that stage too, where you're toggling back and forth. What will my life look like on the outside? You know what it's going to look like on the inside, because you've been living it your whole life. You know what to expect. You know the black and white thinking. Do this, you get that. Do this, you get that. But crossing that threshold and going into the big, wide world is unfamiliar. And that ego is it does not want change. It does not appreciate change. It feels like it will be obliterated if it crosses that threshold. It wants to know the consistency, the security, the certainty. And so it has that it's all about our ego and that safety and that false sense of power and protection and position and inclusion is all, we're risk losing all of that. What we don't realize is when we do have the courage to cross that threshold, there are people on the other side who get you. They understand what you're going through. They've been through it. They appreciate your growth. They understand why you're wobbling back and forth and you look a little mad and crazy because your whole foundation is crumbling. You're not sure where to go from there. They've been through it and they understand it. It's just new to you. And it's very unfamiliar, and we are very insecure with the unknown. And so that's why we have those fears. The fear of abandonment is huge in us. We want to be included. We want to know where we belong. And many times, because we're so familiar with our life within the church, we don't know what to expect. Who will be our friends? Who will understand us? There's nobody out there. It's interesting when you have dense population of LDS people, they'll say, but everybody's LDS. And they don't realize it's like their eyes have not yet seen that highly dense LDS populations also have the highest percent of ExLDS members. So they're more available. People who get you are more available to you than, say, somebody who's in the Bible Belt or back east. And so, but our eyes are trained to only see the members, the active members. So I'm trying to think if I got all my points here. Consider that the world is full of high-functioning adults with high morals. They're being successful. They're living productive lives. A lot of the challenges that they are going through are the same as what you're going through in the church, but they're not being burdened with intense amounts of shame and conditioning. They are actually allowed to engage in their independent thought and being able to step up as the sovereign authority in their life. And that feels uncomfortable. As a child, you want someone else to be responsible if you mess up. As adults, part of us crossing over and taking responsibility and becoming the sovereign authority in our life is going to require us to be fully accountable and to be responsible for our choices and to be able to explore things that maybe we've never given ourselves permission to explore because we were told that outside those prison walls, it was dangerous. Now, let me explain something to you. In this prison scenario, when you've already taught the people that it's dangerous outside and that anybody out there who's trying to get you to come out is against you, that they are, they're somehow inferior because they don't have the gift of the Holy Ghost, or they don't have the Spirit with them anymore. When you're being taught things like that, there doesn't need to be any guards at the gate of that prison. That person is conditioned not to leave. The fear is so intense, and the insecurity and the unknown is so intense that they will not ever cross over. And so this is the gate in which you are at. You're crossing over the threshold and toggling back and forth. And what if it's true? And what if it's not? So I'll give you just a little bit of advice. Once you are willing to cross that threshold and you have the courage to close the door behind you as far as your membership in the church, your activity in the church, everything gets a lot more clear. The further you are away from the bubble and the insulation of the church, and you're not re-inoculating yourself weekly by going to classes or to church and engaging with members and ordinances and all of those things. Once you've stepped away, you see that everything is going to be okay. It was just an illusion, and you are becoming stronger, and you're expanding your consciousness. That fear begins to really dissolve, and the fear of the unknown becomes more familiar, and you become okay with the fact that you don't know everything, and you become okay with the uncertainty. And in that space, your mind begins to expand, and the possibilities grow into an endless sea of possibilities. And that expanded mind becomes so delicious that, of course, you could never fit all that right back into the box, the religious box that you came out of. And so that fear does dissolve. But if you're still toggling back and forth and you're afraid you're making the wrong choice, just realize that that's part of the process. Another bit of advice I have for you is be kind to yourself. If you still have doubts, keep investigating, keep going, keep attending, keep observing your mind, observing your emotions. You don't have to leave if you're not ready to leave. But if you are ready, give yourself permission to do it at the pace that feels right for you. You know, there are some people that they put the cart before the horse, and they find out a little bit of information and they jump ship. And then once they jump ship, maybe they'll go back and investigate some things. And then there are others that will take years and years of investigating and researching before they're willing to cross that threshold. Whatever is right for you is the exact way you should do it, because you are becoming the sovereign authority in your life. You're observing how you function and how you think and what works for you, and you're honoring your journey and realizing that you are an individual, that you have unique gifts and talents, and that caution is a talent, and that risk is a talent, and that you get to do it in a way that feels right for you. So I hope all this was helpful for you, and I wish you the best of luck on your journey. Again, if you're looking for someone to help you during this time and to navigate all of this complex and strange space and area, that's why I'm here, because I know that it's a difficult time, and I want to support you in any way that I can. So let's get connected and stay close.